They said if anyone would pull off a joke from the grave, it'd be Ozzy. And last Saturday, that's exactly what happened. The stained glass windows of the church glowed faintly under a cloud-covered London sky. Inside, the pews were quiet family. Friends, legends of rock, all sat in heavy silence. There were no screams, no applause, no biting off bat heads, only tears. Slow and unfamiliar. This was Ozzy Osbourne's final curtain call. But in the middle of heartache, grief, and the surreal reality that the Prince of Darkness had finally left this world. He pulled one last stunt. A prank, and it was perfectly Ozzy. The kind of thing you never forget. Now, before we tell you what he did, what he managed to set up at his own funeral, we have to understand the man who did it. The man who danced with madness, flirted with death, and somehow, with all the chaos that surrounded his life, still always found time to laugh. Because this story isn't about grief, it's about a love deeper than death, and a father's final message to his daughters, spoken not in words, but in a laugh from the beyond. Let's go back not to the funeral but further. Back to Birmingham, England. Picture it, a young John Michael Osbourne, born December 3, 1948. A dyslexic butcher's apprentice with an affection for the Beatles and a head full of roaring confusion. A boy who would quickly learn life was meant to be survived, not just lived. From factory floors to prison cells. Ozzy's early life wasn't built for success, was built by chaos, and maybe that's what made him so unforgettable. He never tried to look perfect. He just promised to be real, and that realness would carry him into the unlikeliest destiny, fronting one of the most influential bands in history, Black Sabbath. A band that didn't soften their edges to fit the radio. They gutted rock and roll with darkness and genius, pouring in pain, power, and poetry. But despite all the drugs, arrests, fame, and destruction, what most people forget is what grounded Ozzy through it all. Family, Sharon. The woman who knew his demons better than he did. And then the children, especially Kelly, to the world. She was the sharp-tongued, lavender-haired wild child on the Osbournes. But to Ozzy, Kelly was his baby girl, his soft spot, his mirror, and like all great father-daughter relationships, theirs was complicated. It existed somewhere between eyeliner and emergency rooms, backstage passes and quiet breakfasts when no one else was awake. Ozzy wasn't always present, but when he was completely there, and Kelly got him, understood him in ways few ever could. So when she got the call last Tuesday, skidded and cry right away, because to know Ozzy, you almost believed death couldn't catch him. After all, he had escaped it too many times to count. The overdose in '79, the ATV accident in 2003, the bats, the bees, the drugs that would have killed 10 other men. Somehow, he always returned, but this time it was different. Parkinson's had been eating away at his magic for years. In recent private moments, Kelly later admitted Ozzy had begun speaking of the end in softer tones, almost gently, and in a moment that now feels prophetic. He'd told her one day over tea, "I don't want tears at my funeral, Kel. I want people to laugh so hard they pee themselves." She thought he was joking. He wasn't. The day of the funeral arrived like a fall cold, strange. There were faces from every chapter of his life. Geezer Butler, Post Malone. Everyone wore black, but the sadness was colorless. Kelly, her brother Jack, and their mother Sharon sat in the front row. You could hear every sniffle, every shuffle, every heartbeat. The service began quietly. A priest read psalms, a choir hummed Amazing Grace, and the casket-polished black lacquer with a tiny silver crucifix sat at the center like the final period after a lifetime sentence. But then the lights dimmed. Suddenly, speakers embedded in the church walls crackled to life. There was a brief feedback screech. Then a familiar voice. Ozzy's. Boo. For a split second, no one knew what was happening. There was an awkward chuckle. A few people looked around. Then his voice filled the church again, this time unmistakable. You thought you were rid of me that easy? Not bloody likely. Laughter. Nervous. At first, then real, then uncontrollable. Kelly doubled over, half laughing, half crying. Post Malone clapped his hands like a kid. Even old-school rockers, stoic as statues, wiped their eyes while grinning. Because, yes, Ozzy had recorded a posthumous stand-up. Set to trigger only if he really died. It played over the church speakers. 7 minutes of unfiltered, wildly inappropriate, disarmingly sweet humor from beyond the grave. He joked about how he'd probably haunt Sharon, how he wasn't done screaming yet, and how if you hear guitars at midnight, don't call an exorcist, it's just me playing with Randy Rhoads. But the final line? That one silenced the room again. A pause. Then Ozzy's voice, softer, slower. To my kids, ... Don't cry because I'm gone. Laugh because you now officially have an excuse to not invite me to any holidays. I love you all. See you in your dreams. And then? Static taut cut to silence. That was it. Ozzy Osbourne's final prank. Or maybe it wasn't the last. Because what happened 2 nights later would leave Kelly questioning everything she believed. It was 3:12 a.m. Kelly had woken. Up suddenly. Not from a nightmare, from laughter, coming from her phone. It had turned itself on. A saved voice memo titled, "Do not open." Left months ago, her father's voice again. This time, whispering, "Give Jack hell for forgetting me guitar pick. And tell your mom I still hate cucumber sandwiches." Logically, it shouldn't have played. Kelly swore no one touched her phone. No app was running. No voice commands were triggered. It was him, she told a friend the next morning. Completely serious. That idiot dad of mine, still cracking jokes. The friend longtime guitarist, Zakk Wylde, didn't doubt it for a second. He'd helped Ozzy record it months earlier, and he said Ozzy made him promise, if Apple ever figures out how to schedule ghost prank calls, use this. Call it a glitch, call it divine comedy, but in Kelly's words, if my dad could find a way to make death the punchline, he would. And somehow he did. To some, that's a spooky coincidence. To others, it's the final wink from a father too. Wild to stay buried? But to Kelly, it was love. Because no, the haunting wasn't scary. ... It was an echo of endless chaos, of misunderstood genius, of a father reminding his daughter, ... double quotes, even when you think I'm gone. I'm just tuning the amp backstage. This wasn't about legacy. The world will remember Ozzy for the music, the madness, the legend. This was about something smaller, something quieter. The little moments a father leaves behind for his daughter. Beautifully. Inappropriate, unforgettably personal, and always. Somehow exactly what she needed to hear, especially now. Sometimes it isn't the scream that stays with you. It's the silence that follows. And for Kelly Osbourne, that silence following the laughter at her father's funeral felt like a storm waiting underground. 2 days after the memorial, the world had begun to spin normally again. But for Kelly, nothing felt normal. Her phone rang less. The noise faded. The press moved on. But inside her chest, it hit all at once. He really was gone. Except, why did it feel like he wasn't? She returned to her home in Los Angeles, carrying her father's signature silver crucifix in her bag. Not in luggage. In her lap, it was the same one that dangled from his neck during concerts. Touched by stage lights, blessed by vices, burned into rock history. He'd left it for her. A note had been attached, scribbled in black ink on old parchment. Paper, the way he liked to write personal things. Kel, if you're reading this, I'm starting trouble upstairs. Keep this close. And hit M high, sweetheart. Always. She clutched it so tightly during the flight. A crew member asked if she was okay. She just nodded. She couldn't speak because that cross wasn't just jewelry. It was protection, and suddenly, she felt like she did need it. Over the following week, more things happened. Small things. At first, harmless, something familiar would play on the radio. When she walked into a cafe, Ozzy's "See You on the Other Side." Not once, not twice. 7 times in 7 different locations. Instagram served her a sponsored ad for Ozzy's memoir out of nowhere, despite her never having searched it once. The book was long sold out. And then, there was the turtle. A massive, oddly slow-moving desert tortoise appeared in Kelly's front yard one morning. No collar, no tags, just VIBING. She laughed, telling a friend, "My dad always said he wanted to come back as a turtle so he could live a long life doing absolutely nothing." The moment she said it aloud, the tortoise blinked at her and stayed there. 4 hours now for most people. This would be odd but explainable. Not for Kelly, because behind the public pain, behind the rock royalty persona, she knew something no one did. A secret her dad had shared with her just months before he passed. And this is where the story takes a turn. Back in December 2024, Kelly and Ozzy shared a rare, quiet moment, just the two of them, sitting side by side on their backyard bench beneath string lights. Ozzy had insisted they buy, even if we never use the damn things. It was then he said, "I've left you something. Not money, not property. Something better." Kelly raised an eyebrow. "What is it this time?" "A haunted doll." She teased Dot's eye, smiled in that sly, worn way of his, and said, "A trail?" She asked what that meant, but he only said, "You'll know. Just watch for the laughs." At the time, she chalked it up as another eccentric dadism. But now, after the funeral prank, the voice memo, the turtle, she wasn't so sure. Turns out, it was a trail, and it led her to something that shook her to her bones. It began with an email sent from ozzyforever@email.com. No contact, no signature. Just a subject line that read, "Start here." Clicking on it opened one single line of text. "Told ya, I'd never ghost you." Dad, and below it a Dropbox link. Inside, dozens of unreleased videos, personal, unfiltered, recorded for one person, her one. For every major milestone he thought he might miss: her first time bringing her son to preschool, the day her mom might get married, her birthday every year for the next 30 years, and one, simply titled, "Your Worst Day." He didn't want her to watch them all. Not right away, so he added an instruction by video. Of course, play each one when the moment comes. Don't peek. That would be cheating, you cheeky brat. She laughed through tears. Ugly cried, paused, restarted. This wasn't grief, this was presence. Ozzy Osbourne, creating a love letter across time. He had pranked fate itself. Other videos came in different formats. VHS tapes, cassette tapes. One video, mailed to her by longtime family friend Elton John, was labeled, "If shit gets weird." It was just Ozzy laughing for 5 straight minutes. When Elton handed it over in person, he said, "We watched this together. I nearly wet myself." He knew this moment would come. Knew you'd need it more than a song. There's something remarkable about a man known for darkness choosing joy as his exit. Most celebrities write memoirs. Some film tribute messages. Ozzy crafted an emotional scavenger hunt, something beyond a legacy, something alive, because even in the wake of heartbreak, he wanted one thing to ring louder than death: laughter. And the most eerie, beautiful part, didn't keep it all for Kelly. He made plans for Sharon, too. Delivered letters to Jack, edited footage for his grandchildren in pirate costumes, And even Nevin recorded a roast of himself he requested be turned into a Netflix special called The Undead Osbourne Roast on the Rocks. It's unclear if that project will ever see the light of day, but what is clear? Ozzy didn't die quietly, not out of ego, but because he believed something many of us forget. A soul doesn't need a body to show up for the people it loves. In interviews, Kelly has said repeatedly that losing him was the hardest thing she's ever experienced, but that somehow it feels softer than she expected, because he stayed. She says, not in the ghost hunting, haunted house kind of way, but in a deeper way. In the strange coincidences, the belly laughs she didn't expect to have so soon. The songs that seem to cue up exactly when she needs them most, in the accidentally opened bottle of cologne that flooded the house with his scent after a particularly bad day, in the dreams where he doesn't speak, just sits across from her, winking dot, and in the tortoise that still hasn't left her yard. She named him Oz, because why not? As the days go on, one thing becomes more and more clear. Ozzy Osbourne planned his exit like he planned his life. Full of madness, full of music, and absolutely full of heart. Everything he touched turned outrageous, but for his daughter, he turned grief into a conversation that never ends. Not every legend lives forever, but the legendary ones, they make sure laughter does. Kelly wipes her eyes whenever she sees fans post old concert footage and graffiti murals of him. But she doesn't cry from loss. She cries because she's reminded how rare it is to be raised by someone who loved the world as vividly and unapologetically as Ozzy Osbourne. And in his final act, he gave us all permission to do the same. To laugh at the dark, to prank death, to remind our kids not to make the sandwiches wrong, and maybe, just maybe, to haunt the ones we love with joy.